You ready, Hannah? Just give me a nod when to.
Yeah, that's all good.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Froome Town Council Planning Committee, the 27th of January. My name is Steve Tanner. I'll be chairing this evening. As ever, we want to make our meetings available to as many people as possible, whether they are using a hybrid setup or here in the town chamber or online via Zoom. For those in the room, a little housekeeping. Emergency exit is to the rear of the room and the assembly point is in the car park. Toilets can be accessed at the end of the corridor on the right-hand side, and there is an accessible toilet to the right of the lift. The panelists on Zoom, please use electronic raise hand by clicking on the participants button at the bottom of your screen. For those in the room, please raise your hand. For attendees on Zoom, please pose questions through the Q&A board. Attendees' names will become visible on the questions board for the record as your question as your question is answered. For those attendees in the room, again, please raise your hand. Tonight, Jen will clerk and Hannah will manage the questions board and participant settings. The meeting will be recorded for minuting purposes, and we will be also using our live stream to our YouTube channel. Okay. Agenda item number 2, any questions, comments or information from the public or councillors?
They say they know when they want to come in inches later and they'll come in when that is.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Item number 3 on the agenda then. Apologies for absence for the 9th of December meeting. Well, we're only noting apologies because of the informal nature of the meeting that was held. So we noted the apologies of John Nelson, Lizzie Ball, Mark Dorrington, Sheila Gott and Richard Ackroyd. Apologies for absence for today. We don't need to vote on any apologies.
Well, we do actually. I think I have to send my apologies officially. I'm determined that this will be my last online meeting.
Oh, okay. Thank you, John. Sorry about that.
We've also got apologies from Sheila Gore and Lizzie Boyle as well.
Right, but we don't need to vote on those.
We do.
We do need to vote on that.
Yeah.
Right, so can we vote that we accept the apologies? Thank you very much.
That's unanimous.
Right, item number 5, declaration of members' interest. We all have to declare an interest on item number, what is it? 763, which is Froome Town Hall. We all declare a non-pecuniary interest on that. If you could note that, please, Hannah. And for item number 760, are there any? I know there's a couple of non-pecuniary as well.
Own shares in Freeco.
Yeah,
So
own shares in Freeco, but I'm also friends with Froome
okay.
trustee, and I was part of their objection letter, which has already been sent.
Right.
So,
Thank you, Rich. Your
And I own shares in Freeco.
Freeco, right? If you could just note that. It doesn't stop you voting, though, does it? I don't think.
No, that you can still take part in the discussion and vote.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Item number 6 on the agenda. To agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of November, which was the last time we held a formal meeting. So, hopefully you saw them on the agenda. So if someone could propose those for me.
I wasn't here. Can we still? You were here.
I was online.
Present. Paul can, yeah, you were here.
Yeah.
Things an awful long while ago. January 1962. So we're just noting those on. Item number 8. Declaring applications received.
Thank you. Before Mr. Hannah, could you please make Matthew Kendrick a panelist? So we're starting with item number 760 on our agenda, which is land at Birchill Lanes, Froome. The application is on behalf of Land Value Alliances and the Landowners Consortium, and this is an outline application for a Photo will take solar park with all matters reserved. And as we have Matthew Kendrick with us from Land Value.
Sorry, Jane, could you speak up a little bit or pull the microphone a little closer,
Okay.
please? Thank
Yeah,
you.
closer to the speaker.
I can't hear you now. It just shut off. Maybe there's something out there.
That would appear. Yeah,
Yeah, I think that was a thumbs up.
Yeah,
Great.
thumbs up. Yeah.
You can hear us, John.
Right, sorry, yes, I was just going to invite Matthew Kendrick on behalf of Land Value Alliances to perhaps talk us through the proposals, if that's okay.
Yes, thanks, Jane. Can you all hear me? Should I put my video on as well? Sorry, darkened room. So, given the time of night, you can all hear me and everything else. Okay, brilliant. So this application's for a approximately 6 megawatt solar farm on land north and south of Birchall Lane. It's obviously connected to the Selwood Garden community proposal. It wouldn't be able to come forward without that proposal because there's an element of cross subsidy, just to clarify that. So basically the housing will fund the delivery of the solar park. It includes fencing, obviously, and other ancillary items such as the transformers, etc. But it is in outline, and the only reason for that is because at the moment we haven't appointed a contractor, so there would be some minor changes potentially. They might move the odd panel around, and if you went in with a full application, you'd have to then do what's known as a Section 73 amendment just to change those minor things. So we have modelled, however, the heights of the panels in their locations, and it's not intended that the locations themselves would change. In fact, I've seen some of the consultations, such as the Friends of the River Froome consultation, which may necessitate some changes that will have corresponding knock-on effects to the megawattage of the development, but not to a significant degree. We're still going to be well in excess, I would have thought, of 5 megawatts. But we've got to review those because obviously we haven't even had all the consultation responses as yet. I've seen that obviously it's not required as part of the Selwood Garden Community proposal. We probably talked about that quite a lot of times. So there's no policy currently at Mendip that requires renewable energy generation as part of a housing scheme. But we've always thought that is something we wanted to do. So in addition, and I've heard there was a Somerset radio broadcast that unfortunately I couldn't make, quite a lot of the concern was saying, well, why aren't you doing this on the buildings? So the buildings will have photovoltaic panels on as well. So this is in addition. It is not a totally separate proposal to avoid renewable energy on the actual wider site. It's just to boost it, because just by putting on the roofs of houses, we wouldn't be able to get the sort of megawattage that we're proposing here, which essentially, if we can get over 6 megawatts, would actually power the development and make it carbon positive in terms of its long-term operation. Obviously the fencing, 2 metre high, but I think one of the other things is there's a misconception about what the land is currently. So we are proposing about 50% of it would be dedicated as open space biodiversity land, and that would be publicly accessible with new paths provided. But currently, apart from the public right of way that runs through the southern of the 2 parcels, there is no public right of way over the northern land. Yes, people do informally use it. There's a crossing over the railway that I've used myself. But it's not actually public parkland. So this would dedicate 50% of the land as public parkland. And also, we'd hope that the solar farm becomes a bit of an educational resource as well. So it'd be linked with sort of learning about renewables. That's it really, unless I'm happy to answer specific questions. So go through quite a lot of the technical aspects, but if anyone's got specific questions about heights or the flood risk assessment or any other technical assessment work, happy to answer that at the end.
Great, thank you for that, Matthew. Peter, do you want to say something on behalf of Freeco?
Sure. Can we see that with a mic or?
Anything?
Does that work? Can you hear me, John? Possibly not. Good. I'm going to read this, or kind of, I probably won't exactly read it, because I'm here as a founding director of Frico, but I'm kind of, we met as a board to discuss this, and so this is a board view rather than a Peter view. So let me just say something briefly about Frico and what it does, because it bears heavily on what I want to say later on. So Frico was founded 9 years ago to do 4 things: to provide renewable energy to Froome, reducing our climate impact, and support the town council and the town with carbon reduction aspirations, provide income for Froome businesses by renting room and roof and land spaces, provide opportunities for Froome people to invest and to raise money for community energy projects. And with large solar on the health centre and football club, where we built and own the stand, Frico's achieved quite a lot of that quadruple win. Would have been a lot more if government policy had been more helpful. And also if we as a voluntary group had more resources. But Frico's basically done that and put quite a lot of money, back into the community in that way. So to come to this application, which, as Matthew says, is intrinsically linked to the proposed SVV, Selwood Garden Village proposal. And so if the village doesn't go ahead, solar doesn't go ahead either. And it's really important that that's clear. And for us, to be honest, it's slightly perverse that it's come in this order. And I'll explain why in a second. You know, we would have preferred I would have preferred to be sitting here knowing that SDV was or wasn't, did or didn't have outline planning permission. We have no, as directors, we've got no view on SGV's application other than wanting it to be as sustainable as possible. So that's, you know, we don't have a view on SGV, nor are we being asked for it. But as a supporter, as supporters of Unity Solar, we'd love to see all of the SGV buildings orientated for maximum solar build, with maximum installation and so on and so on. And to be slightly cynical and perhaps, you know, and despite Matthew's assurances, my understanding is that outline planning permission, even if SGV have given outline planning permission, you know, whoever develops it would necessarily have to do all that unless those are put in as conditions. So I suppose what I'm saying is, well, you know, that we see this as the solar park as being a very significant addition, but it might be an addition to not very much. That's kind of what I'm saying. You know, I'm sceptical of development promises to do all things sustainable at a later date because they cost money. So we are where we are, and to be honest, the order of these things puts Frico in a slightly awkward position, because we're absolutely clear that we don't want to support the application solely, well, in order to enable SGV to proposal to present higher environmental credentials when that happens. So we don't want that to happen, and therefore to increase their likelihood of getting planning permission. However, you know, if SGV goes ahead, then we prefer that it's possible for a very significant portion of the energy needs of the development to be met by renewables. Not surprisingly, that's what we're into. And given that the application stipulates that the solar energy must be owned by a community organisation, and then with the potential gains that I mentioned, you know, that we've got previously for the community, we support that application. So obviously, and that support assumes that councillors here and amendment are convinced the design and environmental requirements are met. So I realise that that's slightly convoluted, and it's convoluted because, as I say, we feel it came in, you know, it's coming the wrong way around, and I prefer to be, because it puts us in that position of not being quite sure. So are we being slightly used here, you know, in order to give more credibility to the overall thing, which we're absolutely clear we don't want to do. If the thing's going to happen anyway, then we'd really like it to happen in this way, and we'd like to be part of it. So finally, let me stress that we come to this as a position of, you know, we're a Froome-owned and led organisation. So if SGV and the solar park goes ahead, and if Frico goes and decides to engage further, then we'd expect to engage in further consultations to ensure that the final design gives a maximum benefit and a minimum disruption. Thanks.
Great.
That's it is a bit complicated.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Good. I'm happy to answer any of that, but I'm trying to clarify it.
Any questions? John?
Well, I have a whole number of questions, but I guess those questions are sort of in the background of sort of how I feel about this, my worries about the solar park generally.
I've got another member of public here who also wants to speak. So can we hear what she's going to say first, and then we'll have a discussion after that? Okay. Yeah.
Thanks for having me today. So a few points with the length of the intervention. So first of all, just to be clear, I strongly object to the proposal, along with the 88 other people that registered their objections online, for a number of different reasons, and I'll go through them. One is a technical question about whether it's absolutely necessary in terms of the outlay talked about solar panels and houses. Somebody far more professional and qualified than me calculated that the standard domestic rooftop installation is 4 kilowatts with your 1,700 houses. That gets you over your 6 megawatts that we're talking about for the solar panel. Plus there are additional installations, I understand, in the SGB. So there's a question as to whether it's absolutely necessary in terms of being a carbon neutral development. And the irony that SGB will already take up a significant proportion of the green land, and this takes up the vestiges of the remainder, is not, it's not lost on everybody. You talked as well about the 50% of the land that will be open to public use. That's on a floodplain, and as we talked about at the parish council meeting yesterday evening, when it floods, it's not just standing water, it's flooding water, and that's where you propose to put your special park with the biodiversity land and the public access. So there's a health and safety consideration there too. Just to go on, if I may, a little bit personally, so I live at the White House on Birchill Lane, and I will be surrounded on 3 sides by your solar park. I have not been consulted. I have not been spoken to by a representative from your company, and neither have any of my neighbours. Neither, as I understand it, have any of the residents at Edmund Park who would also be severely affected by this proposal. I find that quite shocking, and I would like to understand why we're in this situation. Secondly, there has been no glint and glare assessment of the installation. As far as we can understand, given the proposals that you presented, there would be significant glint and glare and reflection into my property, which is highly glazed on 2 sides, and Edmund Park were also concerned about the same thing. But again, there's been no glint and glare assessment done, so it's very hard to actually say what the impact of this will be. So whilst you say the regulations are quite clear, I don't have a right to view, but I will get onto that in a second. I do have a right not to be affected by the proposal of the glare and soot from these panels. Can I microphone off? I think there's an echo going. If you could just see whether they can hear you better.
I will.
So just on the right of view, it is a very personal thing, as I say.
Are a significant, and I appreciate it, but the fact remains, it's incredibly important to me that those views are not obscured, and actually our access into those lands will then be prevented by fences. And I'm not sure about local government guidance about solar panels being more or less than 500 meters away from residential properties. I'd like to see some kind of explanation as to what the guidance is, and also then what the impact on us will be. People are talking about humming, people are talking about safety implications. I have young children, I have pets, and it's not just me, it's the neighbours also in the vicinity. Very finally, there's a septic tank, which is mine, right in the middle of your solar park plans. And again, it's not represented on your proposals. I'm not even sure that you know about it, if I'm honest, because again, there's been no consultation. So I come right round to where I started. So thank you. I hope that's been clear as to why I strongly object to this proposal. Thanks.
Thank you, Louise.
Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Matthew, do you want to respond to any of those points, or want to take some questions?
No problem. Sorry, I only got about half of that because the echo was so bad to begin with. So I'll have to look into why consultation letters didn't make it to the White House, as I thought we'd letter dropped everyone. So we'll, there has been 2 public consultation events in relation to this. It's also been the statutory consultation that's been undertaken. The septic tank, yes, I've never been made aware of that there's a third-party septic tank on someone else's land. I don't even know how that works. So we'll happily speak to you about that. Obviously, we tried putting a buffer zone around your property in terms of landscaping, and happy to look at that further and see whether we can pull the fencing away, actually, because some of the illustrative planting is within the boundary of the fencing, which actually could be amended. I don't see why we need to do that. So we can look at that. In terms of, I don't know where the 5 megawatts come from in terms of putting solar panels on the roof. That's our specialists would refute that. And even if we could do that, great. We'll have 11 megawatts of clean renewable energy proposed. More than happy with that. So sorry, I didn't get some of the initial comments. In terms of a glint analysis, so we are looking at that currently. Most of the panels, so basically it's where they're orientated. So they're south-facing panels. So you're talking about a small number to the northeast of your property. So we can look at that. But in terms of glint analysis, if you look at the wide number of applications that have been approved in the area, I'm yet to find one that was supported by such a study. It's usually in connection with, and it's been flagged about aerodromes, but obviously we're a significant distance from Bristol Airport, and while that's been flagged, and we have actually asked the council to consult with the Civil Aviation Authority, we don't necessarily think that's required. But if it's requested, then we can do a glint analysis. But in terms of the effect on your property, we're talking about a small number to the northeast, which we can look at. But sorry, I didn't get all of your comments.
The other parts that were raised, Matthew, in terms of consultation, it would appear that nobody on Feltham Lane, Birchall Lane or Edmund Park has had any letters around. The only way they saw of it were notices on some of the lampposts in Feltham Lane. The guys in Edmund Park actually found out about it by chance, and they overlook the site by, they're about 100 feet higher, so there is no hedge or fence or anything that's going to sort of alleviate their loss there. And the other thing that was raised was flooding on the where your new proposed footpath is. Evidently, that is a significant floodplain, not just flooding, but actually flowing water. And that was from the farmer that actually works that land. Last night was mentioned, and he says he has photos. I no idea.
Yeah, it's a floodplain, so it's undoubtedly going to flood at sometimes of the year, as a lot of Riverside Parkland does. So, but I'm a bit unsure about what's been asked for, really. Like, if we want to restrict access, that's fine, that's a possibility.
Well, I think the comment was that you're saying it's going to be a sort of a public open space, and 50% of the land will be for public use. But the reality is that, for a lot of the year, that may not be the case because it will be underwater.
Well, yeah, a proportion of the year, most definitely, as many parklands flood. So we're not suggesting it won't be at all.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Mark?
Yeah, Mr. Kendrick, I've got a question. In your opening paragraph, you said it's connected to Selwood Garden community, and the housing will fund the solar panel farm.
Yes.
How does that work? Because it's some way down the line that the housing could possibly be built, but you're asking for this permission now. So isn't that putting the horse before the cart?
No, there's a financial model, and sorry, this is all being done by Communities for Renewables. So there's a financial model that basically the borrowing is leveraged against the future payments, because the future payments will be secured via Section 106. So there'll be a legal requirement, and we know they're going to come in phases. Like, you're not going to get the full payment up front, because it has to be, a phase of 100 units will then pay 100 units times the per roof tax, for want of a better word. And then that repays the loan. So that's all been looked at, and that's how it would fund the whole solar park.
And the other thing is, if outline planning permission were to be given for a solar farm, what is our guarantee that that doesn't come back to be used for a different purpose? Now this farmland has planning permission on it. What stops you selling it to a
well, it's the same as
developer?
any solar farm, really. That doesn't give you a carte blanche to develop anything on it. Like, for example, you've got lots of solar farms around the periphery of Froome that would be otherwise unsuitable for any other development. But the delivery of it is going to be linked via legal agreement anyway. So it's like saying, you know, you're saying, well, we're saying that we're going to provide 30% affordable. That's a cast iron guarantee. It's in the legal agreement, so it will be delivered, and it has to be delivered. You can't then just turn around and say, no, we're not doing it. It's part of a legal agreement.
Until you do a viability assessment which finds that you can't do that.
But we're not doing that. You know, we could say, you could theoretically say that about anything. We're not running a viability argument, and if we sign that Section 106 agreement, the council can rebuff that. This is a greenfield site. Everything's been carefully priced and to work out, is this possible? And 100% it is. You know, if we're talking about a brownfield site, it wouldn't be possible because you wouldn't be able to afford it, but we can. And you would not be able to run a credible viability argument that then says, oh no, actually we're not doing that.
And do you have any links with the proposed site at Chapman Slade?
No.
That stands alone. That's something.
Yeah, it was quite strange. We've had two at the same time. No, it's a completely separate proposal.
Thank you.
Questions, Rich?
Yeah, thanks, Matthew, for coming. I was part of the Friends of River Froome little consultation group that you presented to them, and you did make some genuine amendments to the original plan. So I'm grateful for that, including natural flood prevention measures and things like that. My kind of concern at the moment, despite what you say, the Section 73, Section 106 and so on, money, is that this is really the wrong way around. This is the tail wagging the dog, whatever stupid phrase you want to use. I can't support this. And I'm quite a supporter of solar power. Effectively, you are asking for permission to put a whole load of solar panels in the worst possible place on that green site before any houses are built. I mean, you may not, obviously you won't build it until that's what you say, but if I were to sort of do it the other way around, most developments these days, the playgrounds and the facilities and the pubs and the community centres all come last because we have to build the houses first to pay for all these things. All the nice green spaces come last, if at all. What usually happens is that those things gradually get knocked off the list. So I find this really unusual. I think it's also premature from a planning perspective because you're still outside the development zone. It still hasn't been approved as development land. So I think the honest thing to do would be to put the whole thing in for planning application, like you said you were going to do. You said it was going to take 18 months for consultation. I would take this application out now because it won't get approval, save some embarrassment and come back with a whole proposal that we can all sit down and talk through properly. I just find it actually, I feel quite affronted by this and quite offended. And I understand, you know, people like Peter McFadden work really hard on solar power. Even he feels embarrassed and taken aback. And I know Louise personally, who's just spoken, and I know they didn't have a clue about what was happening. Other people had to tell them. Yeah, so whatever, you may have tried to tell people and consult, but it didn't happen. So somewhere things went wrong. So I'm sorry, I'm a bit angry, and I'm not normally angry in these meetings. I've got lots of other objections, but you know, it could have been and should have been a really nice, innovative scheme. And I think it still could be if you take it off the table now. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Rich. Jen, you've got some questions from the public?
Yeah, we've got some questions online. So the first question, will there be significant hard landscaping of the site? Will the hedge mitigate the appearance of the panels on the higher sides of the fields? And is there sufficient capability to mitigate the visual impact? Question.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Oh, sorry. I'll get closer. So I'll read it again. Will there be significant hard landscaping of the site?
sorry, hard landscaping, that's
Hard
farmer.
landscaping, yeah,
No hard landscaping, no, other than the fencing.
okay. Will the hedge mitigate the appearance of the panels on the higher sides of the fields?
Well, no, there's going to be a visual impact. You will see it, as you do with any solar park.
Okay, the last part I think you just answered was, is there sufficient capacity to mitigate the visual impact?
Yeah, I think the LVIA has assessed views from Edmund Park 3.9, and there's conclusions in that assessment.
And then the next question is, local government association guidance advises local councils not to build solar farms within 300 metres of residences. Why is this so close? It's less than 150 metres from property.
Our advisors more qualified than me have not flagged that as being an issue, because obviously Freco have got their own advisors looking at this as well.
Is that something that you would be able to take away and respond to?
Yeah, no problem.
Next question. What happens at the end of the lease when the site has to be returned to its original use?
That's up for debate with Freco, really, and amenable to any suggestion on that front. Like, I think my view is that it would then be renewed and continued as a solar site, but who knows what will happen in 25 years' time in terms of technology. To say it's the same with every single solar farm across the UK.
Bear with me. There's so many people putting questions, so many questions being added in. Okay. No, John's got his hand up. Did John want?
John, do you want to answer your question?
Well, I would like to be able to answer everyone else's questions. I'd just like to put on record that I also really object to this proposal for a whole range of reasons, apart from, you know, it's all been said by Matthew, greenfield site, and then the closure costs or renewal costs, well, that's up to, we don't know. And you haven't thought through the whole life cycle of that. I find the solar farms really a blight on this beautiful landscape, and I don't think there's justification. And I think for everything everyone has said and what people will say going forward, I agree with what Rich just said and his recommendation to you. And I'll leave it there because I think enough has been said.
All right, thanks, John. Got any more questions?
Yes, I do have some more questions, I'm afraid. So has an analysis of available brownfield sites been conducted? And have nearby brownfield sites been ruled out prior to this?
No analysis of that has been undertaken because no one would ever build a solar farm on a brownfield site, I'm afraid. It would be completely economically unviable because obviously they have an alternative use value.
Next question. There are several concerns regarding the ecological impact of solar panels, i.e. mining rare metals and particulate pollution. Not sure whether that's a question or a statement, actually.
I'm sorry, that I'm not going to answer that. I'm not going to get into a debate about whether we should be mining minerals in certain parts of the world.
So next question, can we see the EMF risk assessment for the proposed plan? And I'm sorry, I probably should know, but I don't know what EMF stands for.
Electromagnetic.
Electromagnetic field, I've just been told.
I'm not aware that there is one, but I will check with Communities for Renewables and get back to you.
Next question, or a couple of questions indeed, actually. So what are the plans for access to the site, both in the construction phase and the maintenance phase? Both Birchill and Feltham lanes are single track and not suitable for large vehicles.
It's the shortest route from the bypass, but is using that lane for construction, but that's been assessed by the transport consultants. And in terms of maintenance, we're talking about 4x4 very irregularly. So same sort of as agricultural traffic.
Next question. Actually, I think it's more of a statement. This one says, personally, planting trees would be significantly better for the carbon cycle than solar panels with huge amounts of CO2 produced by mining, extraction, transportation compared to output. Has this been considered?
Well, no, they don't reduce energy, obviously.
Next question. Sorry, this is another statement. There are serious concerns amongst residents of Selwood Parish Council about the lack of consultation. And then the last question that we have is, what is the minimum distance of development from the houses in the area? Our house lies in the field which will have the panels within it. We have seen no explanation of the issues and risks of this.
I'm not sure if that's a question, sorry.
Okay. What's the minimum distance of development from the houses in
as explained in terms of the 300 metre, I'm not aware of any set. I'm aware of panels being as close as the ones presented now.
Sorry, another question has just popped in. How will light pollution at night be handled?
There isn't any significant lighting proposed.
Question. Matthew, how high will the panels sit off the ground?
Yeah, so they're obviously on a slant. So
Yeah.
the highest point here, my pen, is 2.9 meters.
Okay,
that's the highest point.
And the fence around the site, how high will that be?
That's 2 meters.
Right. So taking the White House, you're proposing to put a 2 meter fence all the way around on 3 sides of the White House. Is that correct?
There's an offset as well from that, so it's not directly on their boundary.
Right.
And that could be looked at. As I said, there's one side in particular where, in retrospect, we don't need to fence off landscaping, so that could be pulled significantly away.
I appreciate loss of view is not a planning, but to sort of fence somebody in when seems a bit, not very nice.
Yeah, we can look at that. That's not a problem. But yeah, 2 meters is a standard residential fence, but I think we can easily pull that further away.
Okay. Any other questions? Paul? Yeah.
Simple question for Matthew. Why have you put in this planning application now ahead of residential?
Well, we didn't actually. It came in quite a few months after the Selwood Garden community proposal. It's just the way that you've been consulted by the council. And we looked in many ways at whether or not we should put it in as one application. The only reason was almost for the reason we're talking about today, because while I thought there'd be quite a lot of support for a renewable energy proposal, the risks, we don't need to do it in terms of policy requirement. So if there was a lot of objection, we can just drop it, which is, by the sounds of it, some people are asking us to do. So we can look at that as an option.
Good.
Sorry, Matthew, so you're saying that this is not down to you that we're seeing this first, this is down to Mend It?
Yeah, it's just the way it's been. So they should have consulted, they have consulted you on the Selwood Garden community, haven't they?
Yeah.
So it's just they're asking you, it's them, it's not us. Yeah. So we've always consulted on this in tandem with the wider proposals.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So we have already looked at the Selwood Garden community application, knowing that there will be some revised plans coming forth. So we haven't actually commented on that yet. This application was submitted shortly after that application, but because the vast majority of this application is actually outside of our parish, I think there's a slight bit of one field that falls within our parish, so we weren't formally consulted by Mend It, which is why we're now seeing it at such a distance apart from when we looked at the original application.
Okay.
They haven't been submitted as one application. There's still 2 separate applications, but the gap in us considering them was for that reason.
Okay, I start to understand that, but in effect then, so this could still be approved before the rest of the whole development?
Yes.
We'll be asking Mend It not to do that. They should be considered in parallel.
Yeah, okay, that's good, Matthew. I'll take back a little of what I said earlier.
Yeah, because I don't
person.
we don't want it. They are one and the same. They're totally reliant. Yes, this could get approved just to show that if the wider development went ahead, this definitely happens, and I think there might be an advantage to that. But no, we would be saying they need to be considered as one.
Okay, thank you for that.
Going back to what you just said, Matthew, if the solar farm doesn't get approval, doesn't go ahead, or you drop it because it's not worth the aggravation that you're obviously facing, do you have a fallback position? Do you have a plan B of what to do with the land?
Not at all. No, it would just be left as it is.
So it wouldn't be part of the greater Selwood Garden community housing scheme?
Unlikely. Yeah, it would be divorced from that. I don't know there'd be a logical reason for putting housing here, so it wouldn't be.
Okay, thanks. John, you got more comments?
I had a teeny technical question. It's just on a solar park, what's the long-term plan for controlling vegetation in and around the panels?
Well, underneath, I think it tends to be sort of low sward grassland, because it's obviously almost like, grass that grows in shadow. So, but you would manage it. So there'd be a management company. The way I envisage it would be that you've got the two separate things here. The fenced demise of the solar farm would be dealt with by the solar farm provider, and then the rest of it would go into whoever manages the wider public open space and strategic ecology areas associated with SGV, which the offer would be that potentially that's the town council if they wanted to take on the wider management of that. If not, it would be a dedicated management company.
But which means, I guess I was actually looking at the granular detail, like what kind of sprays are being put down, because that's what often happens. It's just sprayed off to keep it clear. So that's just another technical issue. I'll leave it there.
I think that wouldn't be the case. You've got to agree an ecological management plan anyway, and that would prevent the use of sprays and pesticides, herbicides, all that sort of stuff.
I think Helen Kate wants to ask a question, so Hannah's just going to invite her.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, hi Helen.
Hello there, hi. Two issues. I'm one of the ward councillors. Hello Matthew, I think we've seen each other online before. Hi. A point of information, which is that in the submission, it says that the solar farm is located in Selwood Parish. I believe that Mendip officers saw that and only consulted the people in Selwood Parish. The lady who lives in the White House, I apologise, she should have got the letter. But it meant that the people in Edmund Park were not consulted until I unravelled it, which was between Christmas and New Year, because I was getting panicky telephone calls from some of the residents from Edmund Park. So that was why there was an extension to the consultation period. And I think it's been fairly well publicised now, and that Edmund Park residents have had an opportunity to comment. Also, some of the houses in Edmund Park hadn't actually been built out when some of the when the application first went in. So it's just a bit of right and left hand catching up with each other. So anyway, I apologise for that. My going on to actually commenting on this, I'm slightly concerned about the footpath diverted in what is usually the maize field. It's very, very muddy at the bottom there. I was asked to go and meet a chap who lives very close to the bridge. I'm afraid I can't remember his name, Mr. Sergu, I think. I hope he doesn't mind me saying his name online. And he told me that when the river floods, and I have seen the river flooding, that at the bottom of the allotment, sometimes where the community orchard is, it even floods there. But the water sometimes gets diverted and goes along the inside of the railway line, i.e. through the field, the bottom of the maize field. And then he says the water goes underneath the railway bridge and then joins the river further down, and as it flows towards Edmund Park. So my concern would be that diverting that footpath, which you seem to, I've seen two sets of plans, and I've asked Gwilym Jones, the officer, which is the current one, and he's explained that the first one did not have a diverted footpath, and it looked as if you were going to plant some woodland at the bottom of the field, as you were with the field next to the allotment. But the second plan that we saw, suddenly that woodland wasn't there, and the path has been diverted right down to the bottom. Could you please reconsider, if you're going to put this through, and and if it goes to planning board, my co-ward councillor has asked for it to go to planning board. I had an open mind on it. I haven't decided yet, but if you do, would you consider rerouting that path as you had it in the first plan, please, and so it doesn't actually go all the way down to the bottom? Because I really do think that it's very muddy, even at the best of times down there.
Yeah, that's a top of my list to do. So I think, subject to agreeing that with the landowners and the applicant, we'll do that. I don't think it's a problem. It'll reduce the megawattage of the solar farm, but yes, then we might be at 95% of our energy needs, but I don't think that's the end of the world. I think if we want to keep the public right of way, that's fine.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Helen. You got any more questions?
Yes, sorry, there are just a couple more questions that have been popped in. Who would receive the annual rental or lease fees for the use of the land?
That should be going into a community use, a community ownership model. So that will be, so people buy shares in this, potentially via free care, I believe, and then that fund is leveraging, whatever the dividend is plus the finance that delivers it in the first place.
And another comment actually from Christopher Bennett from Selwood Parish Council, saying that Selwood Parish Council have not been consulted on the solar park either.
They should have been, and actually there was Mark Brayley presented to them last night.
Yeah. Okay. Just a couple of questions or comments from myself. I was looking at the consultee responses, and it looks as though, I think it was Natural England have asked for a habitats regulation assessment.
That's an appropriate assessment as well. That's connected more with the wider development. So that'll be one for the whole. So we already know, we've been in discussion with them on a number of occasions about doing that for the whole site, but it needs to incorporate this as well.
Okay, so essentially there's some further information to come forward that we would be able to consider.
Yes, so the appropriate assessment and habitats regulation assessment, but that can't be done till we've finished our bat mitigation scheme.
Okay, and also I think the Environment Agency were asking for some more information to consider the flood risks on the site.
I think it was just the point about the plans that Councillor Kay mentioned. That was their main point. Apart from that, I think they raised no objection. So we just got to go back to them on that and confirm it.
Okay. That's not what I read, but that doesn't mean to say that that's not the case.
I think they were talking about engineering works in the floodplain. They didn't have a problem with the solar farm, from what I recall. It was the engineering works that might be associated with natural flood management. Okay. But from discussions with the Friends of River Froome, I understand they've done their works, didn't require consent elsewhere, so they wouldn't be classed as engineering works. But we'll clarify that with the EA.
So in terms of the habitats regulation assessment, what's the likely timescale on that coming?
I'll be some time yet, because you've got to get your plans fixed, which we are taking into account all the comments and making changes. Then you've got to fix that, agree the mitigation, then you run your habitats regulation assessment.
I think also you said that you were going to be looking at proposals for fencing and so on at the White House. So
yes, we can look at that as well.
Yeah, so I know this is only an outline application, but essentially there's going to be more information and perhaps revised plans coming forward that we'll need to consider at some stage.
Yeah, I think we could probably get the revised plans together within 3 to 4 weeks, so we could submit those to you when we go back to amend it. But I think it's because the outline nature really, I think, should only be left to where the panels go exactly within the fence enclosure. So if we can get fences right, pull them away from properties, potentially change this public right of way diversion so it just remains in situ, look at what we're going to do with the residual land. That shouldn't take more than 3-4 weeks.
Questions for anybody? Matthew, I just got one sort of comment. It's not really a question, it's more an observation. I mean, we've seen lots of developments come forward over the last few years, since I've been involved. And, how these things work from my perspective is obviously you will put together the Selwood Garden Village consortium, whatever. And at some stage, you then sell those parcels off to housing developers. And we've seen, things change from outline to reserve matters drastically over the years. I mean, it never changes for the better. It always changes for the worse. And I just see this as a bit of a get out of jail card for them, because, there's going to be more and more pressure on them to build carbon neutral developments and their houses to be to a certain standard. And by providing the solar farm, it's almost, we don't have to worry too much about the standard of their houses because, it's all offset with a solar farm. And it's no net gain to the town, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. I really behind the idea of solar panels on everything and solar farms, but I can see, I'm not going to name, but the 5 big house builders get hold of Selwood Garden community, and they're just going to run riot on it. And that's my main fear with this. And that's why I believe this shouldn't be even looked at until Selwood Garden community is looked at, and the whole thing is looked at as one sort of, one application and discussed accordingly.
I don't disagree, Steve. I think that it should be, as we said, we'll be asking them to determine it in parallel. The perennial issue of, will people renege on the promises that are given now? That won't happen, and you'll get more information shortly. It's the bane of my life. This week I've been drafting the design principles document that will set out exactly what will be enshrined in any potential permission. So to reduce dramatically any wriggle room. So I can share that with you. So the town council can see it. Hopefully you'll see it's how robust it is. If you don't agree it's robust enough, then we can look at how we change that. In terms of the specific point about how the housing is built, building regs has already changed anyway. That requires essentially the model dwelling. I think you have to model your energy requirements off. It actually allows for photovoltaic panels or air pumps, whatever it might be. So even under building regulations now, you couldn't renege on that. And then what I've been writing today is what we'd like to say, as building regs are going to change, over 13, 14 years of the lifetime of the application, we can't set the standard now anyway. It was in 5 years' time, it'll be totally outdated and actually probably nowhere near ambitious enough. So what I'm trying to do now is say, look, building regs is the standard. It's recently changed to quite a good change in terms of the renewable energy element. And we've just got to look what additional measures that we can enshrine in this document over and above that won't prejudge changes in building regs, like, for example, committing to no gas, that sort of thing. So measures we know we can adhere to throughout the lifetime, but then also building regs will ensure thermal efficiency, fabric first approach. We're talking to registered providers of affordable housing as well to say to them, well, look, there's a solar park, that's great, you get all the energy from that, but what are you doing in addition? And we're trying to get from them what they could commit to on that front, and then also doing the same with house builders. So, and then that will be enshrined in any permission. So that people can't rip that up, because it will be like any approved plan. It'll be approved on the list of documentation. The design principles have to be followed into the design codes you've talked about, and then onto the delivery on ground.
No, thanks. We really love to see that as soon as we can. I have to admit, it sounds good.
Yeah, it's sort of taking the design and access statement that we've got, beefing it up, but getting rid of all of the stuff about how it was designed and the reasons behind it, and putting in actual just as easy to pick up and understand list of rules, and looking at the possibility of a checklist that developers have to go, right, okay, how have I met all of those design principles checklists? And if they can't, then they can't get reserved matters planning consent.
Good. Sounds interesting. Jan, did you have another question? Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, so there's just one other question that's been popped in. I'm not sure you'll be able to answer it necessarily, Matthew. It's asking, will there be a reconsultation on new plans? I guess that depends on how much they changed, and that's really dependent on.
Yeah, there definitely will be, because even if the council classified them as not being material enough to make a reconsultation, we'll be asking for that. And in the PPA, there's an assumption that that's going to happen. And sorry, PPA is planning performance agreement with Mendip, so there is an allowance to do a second round of consultation on revisions.
Would it be helpful if we tried to put together a list of the properties who would benefit from being consulted?
Yes, I think that's more for Mendip. I think the immediate people we've heard from will contact them directly.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, questions from anybody? Public? So how would so Matthew, you're going to get back. You're going to send in amended plans?
Yes, as I said, about 3 to 4 weeks, I'd estimate.
So
There's also the habitats.
Oh yeah.
Assessment as well, which will take longer.
Right.
And oh yes, and the Gleams plan. If one. Would that only be if Mendip requests one, Matthew, that you would look at?
If they request what, sorry, Jane?
A Gleams glare assessment.
Well, we're consulting the Civil Aviation Authority. Network Rail have already been consulted, so it's whether if they ask for one, essentially. But we'll look at that in relation to the White House property anyway, okay. Because in effect, I know a lot of people in Edmund Park have referenced it as a problem, but the panels are facing the wrong way to have any glint effect on those properties because they're to the north. They simply won't be orientated in that direction. So there is only one property south, and that's the White House. So we'll potentially look at that separately. But if the Aviation Authority or Network Rail asks for it, then we'll do one then. So we just, rather than go off and do something that might not be required, we've asked both those bodies.
Thanks, Matthew. Any thoughts?
Just to
get amended plans. Else.
I just had a question. Does that mean?
Sorry, John.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Does that mean the option to actually just pull this for now and hold off for 18 months is off the table as far as you're concerned, or is that still another possibility?
So is that a question to me, John?
Yes.
Yeah, I think if we pull it for 18 months, so obviously Selwood Garden Community is going to be determined one way or the other within that time frame, and I want to have the certainty that the solar park is going to happen because it would be linked via the Section 106 agreement. So what we couldn't do is, if they're not considered in parallel, you couldn't offer the monies towards the provision of the solar farm, because they'd say, well, what's the guarantee that you've even got planning consent? You haven't. So they have to be considered together. And we've obviously consulted extensively on the wider proposals, so we wouldn't be pulling those for 18 months.
Thanks. John.
A quick question, Jane, actually, if you to clarify that. Matthew's talked about Section 106 in relation to the solar farm. Does that mean that this development is offsetting part of their Section 106 commitment to using the solar farm rather than other Section 106?
If I understood you correctly, I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
No, sorry. If I understand the question, it's no. So sorry. There's no alternative Section 106 requirement / financial burden on us. This is something we are committing to voluntarily. If it fell away, which it's about, off the top of my head, it averages out about £1,800 per home. It's considerable. If that fell away, we just simply wouldn't be paying that contribution. It's not being taken out of public open space or education or whatever.
That was my question. Yeah,
I didn't understand it correctly.
Okay. Yeah, it wasn't very well put.
So, sorry, did that answer the question?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, just very quickly. Matthew, you suggested that if there was significant opposition to the proposal that you'd take it off the table. 89 objections were made in the consultation period, which I understand, I'm quite a novice to these things, but I understand is a significant number, like probably more than any other planning applicant. Maybe Selwood Garden Village had more, I don't know. But certainly my understanding from Selwood Parish yesterday, that was a very, very significant number. So just to ask you to go back over that position that you just outlined.
Yes, we can take that into account. Obviously, I deal with a lot of planning applications. 89 objections is quite standard, to be frank. A lot of very small applications can engender hundreds of objections. Solar farms often, wind turbines, hundreds and hundreds of objections. So, yeah, it's just, as we said, we don't need to do this. If people are saying, look, we think it's totally unacceptable, but I think we've got to balance that against the fact that usually anyone that comments on a planning application is an objector. It doesn't capture the general support for renewable energy generation.
Thanks, so again,
well, I still feel somewhat it's out of joint, really. I appreciate everything you said, Matthew. You know, it's been very helpful, actually. And I am somebody who generally supports solar parks and panels, but I kind of want them to be done properly, and I don't want them to. I think Edmund Park residents, I think Louise Whitehouse has spoken about. You know, it's a big bit of green space which is going to be lost already. And you say that it's not possible to generate everything on the roofs of the houses that are going to be built. That may be the case, and it's good that you've looked at an alternative. You know, I personally think it's good that you've looked at this. So I'm not dead set against it, but I'm feeling that my nose is put out of joint because somehow this doesn't feel right yet. That's where I am. I think there are things to be changed. I know it's only an outline permission that you're asking for, and yet I still sort of feel I want to see the rest of it first. Those the document you were referring to earlier, which would have all the guarantees and the kind of restrictions, I'd like to see that first. I'd like to see that first, and if that was approved, I'd be much happier to see this go ahead. That's kind of how I am really. I'm coming from, I've been stung in 7 years of being on this panel, been stung so many times by developers who promise one thing and then do another, or come back with a new set of plans. It's all really good, and then they go on appeal for their original plans and win those and develop those, and then don't do anything, sit on it for 5 years. So I am very cynical. I've become quite cynical for the whole planning process, sadly.
I think, unfortunately, that's a common issue. But I think the principles document we talked about, which will set out what we're signing up to, is going to be maybe a bit longer because it has to be linked to all the revised plans, and we're currently in discussion with Natural England about bat mitigation. So probably maximum 2 months before you'll see that. But and obviously we'll send it directly to you as well when it's ready. Maybe a bit quicker, just depends on other consultees, really.
Okay. So I think the question is, do any of us support it in its current form?
James got a comment.
Sorry, I was just following on from what Rich was saying. I think, Rich, you were talking about the design codes that Matthew was
Yes, so I couldn't remember the word code. So
design codes relating to the solar park?
So the design code will be setting out the standards for the wider development. So it will say things like, this, and actually section 106 heads of terms, you'll have those as well by then, which will set out exactly what's being signed up to in terms of solar park delivery. So it may be that you defer until those documents are available, and I'll try and get them to as soon as I can, but I think being realistic, should probably plan for 2 months.
No, that was my question, I think.
Because my worry is that you get outline planning permission for this, and then maybe the codes don't go through, or the whole thing gets taken over by, I won't name anybody, but a well-known developer or 10, and they say, right, we're throwing out the codes, we're not bothered about that, we're going to double the number of solar panels down here, and do you know where I'm coming from? It's that kind of securing the best outcome. It's not allowing it at the last minute to be sold to the lowest bidder, as it were, if you get what I'm saying. I'm really concerned that this is premature. I want to see the highest quality, those codes and things for the whole scheme. I want to see those first, and I want to see those in tablets of stone, and then we can say, yeah, okay, go with this. That's where I come from.
But if you make that request, as the town council will write in support of that, saying to the council, please, well, we've already told them, don't determine until one, Selwood community is ready to go to committee, and two, you've got to allow people to comment on those further details.
Mhm.
I was just thinking that kind of ultimately, you know, for us, this is only going to go ahead if SGC goes ahead. And in a sense, our choice is if GC goes ahead, or SGV as it's being called tonight, goes ahead, would we like it to incorporate a solar park, or would we not like it to incorporate a solar park? And in my mind, I'd rather there was renewable energy there than not. But it does seem that with the current application, there's some things that need looking at and sorting out. And I think there's conversations to be had with local residents, et cetera, But, you know, I'm thinking that I'd rather there was some form of renewable energy, as well as, in addition to what's on the roofs. You know, there has to be, we have to have houses built with fabric first, you know, high standards. We have to have PVs on roofs, et cetera. And on top of that, if we can have more, then that's great. But it's got to be acceptable, right? As acceptable as it can be for local residents, I think. And that's really important. Or there needs to be some sort of, you know, compensation perhaps for local residents, you know, I don't know, free electricity or something, I don't know. You know,
So Matthew, what I'm hearing from you is that if we either defer or basically write to Mendip and say, we don't want to determine this until such time as the main Selwood Garden Village comes up, you would support that?
Yes, definitely. Because, you know, it's not me asking you to consider it now. Unfortunately, it's just the way Mendip's admin has worked out.
So.
Oh, I was just going to suggest that maybe if we responded to Mendip now at this stage to say that we don't feel that we can comment in full at this point in time, I would ask that they don't determine the application until further details and design codes have been consulted on, and that there needs to be further discussions with residents to agree what those changes might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
Okay. Yeah. John,
Yeah.
please come up.
Yep.
Right, shall we vote on that then? Yes. Good. Poser, please. Rich, second. Mark. All those in favour? Good.
That's unanimous.
Thank you.
And sorry, if I can ask, you copy me in, and then I will respond to the council and say that we want this as well.
Yes. Checking that you've got the contact details for the owner of the White House.
Yes.
Yes, we know that.
No.
We may do.
All of Edmund Park.
Thank you very much, Louis.
Okay, yeah, if you could pass those on, that'd be very, very helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, we'll make sure we pass those on. And again, thank you for your time this evening.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Working very well. So you might have to shout at the little UFO. We might have to bring it towards you.
This one's not working.
Yeah, I think it's just echoing and Helen can't hear you. So if you bring this this way, and then when you talk, if you aim it at that, hopefully it should work.
Station or
Station because there's that.
go and get.
Yeah, but how do you do that on a huge scale,
Okay.
like in a central unit? I understand how it's not about the ones I put here.
Right, shall we move on? The next one we're going to talk about is item number, last one on the list, which is the development at the station, which is item number 778. Service yard to the rear of units 1 to 4 station approach. I believe we got some members of the public who are sitting outside who Jane has just gone to get. So they're with us for a minute. Everyone jumps up and gets a cup of tea. Who have we got?
Having a lot of issues with the microphones tonight.
We are. Well, yes, apologies if you can't hear us. We're having issues with the microphones. But we'll get there. Evening, gentlemen.
Did you want to talk to the people online just to see if they can hear you, just a little test?
Yeah, sorry, everybody, just checking whether you can actually hear me for those online now. If somebody could put a comment, if somebody could put a comment in the chat to say if they can hear me.
Oh, yeah, there we go. We're getting yeses and raised hands.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, Steve, where did we get to?
Just introduce what we're doing. Let's discuss next. So,
okay,
leave it to you to introduce it in full.
So we are going to talk about. Bear with me.
Christopher Bennett with his hand up. I'm not sure whether he's put his hand up to talk or whether to say that he can hear you. Do you want me to just allow him to speak?
I think. I'm not sure Chris will be talking about this one.
Okay, let me ping him a message on
It's
Steve.
Leader, isn't it?
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry
it's
about
Chris Bennett,
the confusion, everybody. So we're now going to be talking about item number 778 on our list, and this is the service yards to the rear of units 1 to 4 station approach Froome. This is for the erection of 6 live-work units, recladding to the elevations of units 2 and 4 station approach and associated works. So we have previously looked at some amended drawings, and now there are some further drawings which mainly relates to the access, particularly the pedestrian access. And I know that we have Chris Beaver, who is the agent for the application, with us. If Hannah could perhaps make him over to a panelist, and whether or not he's able to expand on what those amendments were for us. If you're happy to, that is Chris. There he is.
Can't hear you, Chris. I think you're still muted. That looks better.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Got you now.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so I'm not used to Zoom. I use Teams more. So, Jane, would you like me to say a few words now, or?
Yeah. If you could just introduce the changes, please, Chris. And then
yes, that's fine. Yeah.
From, Steve and the Holler family.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so you'll recall that I came along with the applicant last time this was considered, and subsequent to that, we received a sort of holding objection from the Highway Authority, and so in response to that, we've made 2 further revised plan submissions. One on the 20th of December, which Jane, I don't know whether you picked up, and then we've submitted a further revised plan today, actually. So in terms of the work we've done since we last met, so we had this holding objection from the Highway Authority with a number of sort of technical questions and points. So what we did was we commissioned an actual survey, or our highway consultant did. So we put a loop down, so we've got actual empirical evidence of how much traffic uses that access and what type of traffic uses it. And we've put in a much more detailed transport technical note, which went in on the 20th of December. In addition to that, the applicant's now committed to providing a 24-hour key fob route access through the actual building itself, which would be sort of for use for residents, so they can actually at all times go through the sort of corridor through the building. And other changes that were made, which were in response to the highway officer's comments, were some works to the actual frontage car park and introduction of trees and bollards to help actually define the parking spaces in the frontage car park, and to make a more sort of orderly sort of use of that frontage car park. So that will give some sort of biodiversity enhancement with the tree planting, and then the bollards will also help order it. So these are relatively sort of minor changes, but they will make a difference in terms of safety. Today, in response to a further highway comment, the applicant has agreed to widen the access and the entrance into the station car park, and also look at the sort of boundary treatment as well. So we've just submitted that final plan to the planning officer today, and the applicants agreed to that. So we're pretty confident that with these latest round of changes, that the scheme as now proposed should be sufficient for the Highway Authority to withdraw their objection. And then that will hopefully have removed the highway issues. And then the planning officer can then sort of weigh up the whole case in the round and, and take it forward to a decision. So I think probably I'm happy to answer any questions, and Jane has got access to the plans, which potentially could be called up on the screen if need be. So I'll probably leave it for there, but we'll be inviting you to support the scheme and then put it back over to Mendip to make a decision. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Chris. Johnson? Yeah. Sure, you've got a bold enough voice.
Well, I hadn't held one last time. My glasses. There's not a great deal I can add to my objections to what I've previously said, but I have sent in some more plans and I'll go through a few ideas. Firstly, the traffic monitoring system, which was conducted, was not conducted under normal circumstances. The gym being forced to close at the end of the year actually closed it to the people who use it, and it was a week or two after the people stopped coming, the customers, and so that reduced the amount of traffic flow by at least 30 or 40%. So the figures aren't true. Now, moving on from there, city plumbing, dimensions, bathrooms, and Froome reclamation. See what goes on in the yard area, both at the top, at the back of city plumbing, and then the bottom where dimensions have their deliveries. So we know what goes on every day, whereas let's say other people don't see what we see. So if I refer to my plan of the turning circle, Chris has drawn this turning circle, and I've said that this, by a letter from Mr. Charlton, who's 40 years experience of driving articulated lorries, has said that that turning circle is a mathematical theory, and to do this in practical terms would be an unsafe maneuver. It would rip the tires off the trailer, because trailers on an Arctic don't turn around in a circle, they skid the back tires around, and it rips the tires off the rims, it tears up the tarmac, which I know is something that the client doesn't like. So that maneuver there is an impossibility to do it safe, and the turning circle that Chris has drawn actually encroaches on the land of Froome reclamation. Well, of course, that's not possible. Now, if you can imagine, if that slip road is introduced there to get down to those 6 houses, when that Arctic comes in, and should it be able to get in and manage to turn, he has to park on that loading bay, which you've got a copy of that plan. He parks on that loading bay, and it takes half an hour at least for the forklift driver to put his safety guards around that lorry and unload it. Now that takes half an hour. During that time, that new road is going to be blocked for allowing traffic in and out. So there's going to be a queue of traffic waiting to get in or out of that area where the houses are proposed. With that, another larger vehicle could easily come in, and he's going to have to park and wait, and that will block Froome reclamation in as well for half an hour or more. The possibility of is just endless as to what's going to happen. There's just not room for all these vehicles to try and get in and out. It just impossibility. Of course, imagine, so the most important thing about this, of course, this planning application is health and safety. And it's absolutely the wrong place to build residential properties in the middle of a busy industrial estate. I've explained the problems with traffic. There's going to be a lot more traffic, and it's going to be impossible for the three biggest units here to work. It just can't happen. And as you know, I've sent in alternative plans. I'm sure you've all had those and studied.
Yes, thank you.
And I hope you agree that that's a much better proposal. The units are exactly the same size, but they don't need houses on top of them. In fact, you could have 4 bigger ones or whatever. It was just a sketched idea that would work, and to let the rest of us be able to continue our businesses in peace without all these obstructions. I think that's all I can say, really.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Steve, can I just?
Yeah.
Just one question. You mentioned, because it was a concern I had, I thought about later, you know, if there were 2 lorries down there, so you've got one unloading and another one arrives, what happens to that lorry? Do they park up? Where would they park up? At the moment, there would be room for that second lorry to park somewhere, yeah. But if this plan, you're saying if this plan went ahead, they wouldn't be able to do that? No. Well, even if the plan goes ahead, like Mr. Charlton says, this turning circle that Chris has drawn here is a mathematical theory. It takes a lot more room to turn than that. If you imagine the trailer on an Arctic, some of them have 12 wheels. And when an Arctic, you know, a normal lorry goes like this and all the wheels turn. An Arctic, the back end is skidded around like that in such a short jackknife position. And the tires can rip off, they will tear up the tarmac. It's just unsafe. And if it breaks down there, it could be blocked for hours and hours because it will happen. Nigel's had 40 years experience driving Arctics, and he sees this. And he says in the letter, he wouldn't attempt that maneuver for all those reasons. And it will, as you can see, I'm repeating myself now, that area there is used by the footprint of that lorry, and it just blocks off that new road. And the area that you've marked, sorry, I was just...
The
little hatched area that you've marked there, which belongs to the reclamation.
Yeah.
I went down there yesterday just to have a little look, and that was actually, there was a couple of transit vans from some other company down, and I think the reclamation van was there as well. Is that space where people park? That green area there is our parking area. Yeah. So that could potentially as well be full of, could have a couple of vehicles in there. Is that what you're saying? Oh yeah, our car park is for customers. Yeah. And sometimes we use our yard for parking and unloading, but there's no reason why some of our vehicles could be here. So if some of your customers would park there, they wouldn't be a turning circle anyway. Well, these foreign bodies, should we call them, are either for, because we don't have we don't have an owner Arctic. Actually, that was one of my final questions, because there weren't any Arctics there. They were only sort of... Yeah, no, we don't own an Arctic. 3 ton, yeah.
But even if there were no vehicles parked on your land, which I take is on your deeds on the green there, is belonging to you, the curtilage of your property. Yeah. This swept path analysis here drives over your land anyway.
Yeah, which it shouldn't, of course.
So you would have to give your permission for that to happen.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions for anyone? We have asked a lot before. Just I think if there's anything else I need. How many, Steve, I'm sure we've asked this question before, but how many Arctic movements are there, you know, per day or per week down that road?
There's a guaranteed, for City Plumbing,
yeah,
they have, 1 week they have 3 Arctics, the other week they have 2 Arctics. That's guaranteed. Plus other, you know.
Other deliveries.
Yeah, they're not Arctics, but they can be 6 or 8 meters, just almost as big, because the size of a non-Arctic takes the same room to turn as an Arctic. And City Plumbing, they go right down to the bottom of the plant, where the houses are. They drive right down to the bottom of there, and the forklift has to come out and unload them as well.
Yeah, Chris, do you want to respond at all?
Yes, I mean, what I would say is that we put in a tracking plan today to the planning officer, and I've just had a chat with the applicant, and we can categorically say that there is no encroachment on third-party land. So, and the turning circle uses industry standard software for tracking Arctic lorries. So I think probably the Highway Authority will have to come to their own sort of opinion on that. But it's entirely within industry standard. There's no encroachment on third-party land, notwithstanding what Steve was saying. The applicant controls the parking on both sides. The other thing I would say is that these are designed as live-work units, and that there is an ability for the occupiers of these live-work units to have direct pedestrian access through the building. So if there is some inconvenience on the sort of, 2 or 3 times a week when a lorry is unloading, they've got an ability to use a separate safe pedestrian access straight through the building. So on that basis, I think Steve's comments are baseless in planning terms, and we invite you to take a more objective view of it. Thanks.
Well, I just generally, I've sort of made a bit of a decision, Chris. I think it's overdevelopment. I do. I think it's. I think 6 units is too many. I think if you'd gone for 5, you could have moved it all back a bit, and there wouldn't be any problem, or in terms of taking space from that drive. You've also kind of seems to be quite an expensive way of rearranging that whole slope. So. But that's your decision to go with that, I guess. But I do have issues about live workspace there. I understand where Raj is coming from, the owner of the site. I know he wants to do things down there, but it just feels this is not, as I said last time, I think this is not the answer. And I don't think I could support this. Sorry, but it's not. It doesn't look right. It doesn't feel right. I think there's too much potential for accidents to happen. I can see there would be traffic issues if all the residents wanted to offload their stuff at the same time as some deliveries. I could see that easily happening. And a few visitors to the reclamation yard. I do think it needs rethinking. I think the Civic Society had some interesting things to say about this as well. So I just think it needs to go back to the drawing board and be rethought. Maybe 4 units and take up a bit less space or something would work. Because I don't want to stop development down there. I don't want to stop. It's been great what's happened down there in many respects. But equally, there should be some respect for existing businesses that have been there a long time, I think. And this does seem to impinge on their commerciality and viability. And I'm sure that's not right either. So I've got reservations about it. Sorry.
Very much in accord with that. I think the issue I've got is with the live bit of the live work units. If they were work units, I would be happy to support this. But it seems to me that the work bit seemed to be quite almost a minor part of the whole plan. We looked last time, the it seemed to me that the work bit seemed to have about the footprint of a standard single garage on a 3-story building. People will buy these houses because they're going to be edgy, they're going to be industrial chic, they're going to be lovely. But within a few months, they're going to get fed up of 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning being woken up by forklifts in Froome Rec and complaining about that. I mean, my analogy always is the old rectory complaining about the church bells. And I think that's what could possibly happen here. So were it to be an industrial unit, as the area is industrial already, I'm happy to support that. It's the live bit I'm not at all happy with, so can't support it as it stands.
And I kind of probably go along with what's been said. I think as I said in the previous meeting, I think this is a brilliant idea, and I think this, in many ways, it's a fantastic scheme. Unfortunately, it's in the wrong place, and I think it's just that tension between the residential and the business use, and I think it just doesn't feel right. The kind of solutions to resident access are very convoluted, going through another building. And that kind of smacks that it's almost a desperation in a sense to trying to shoehorn an inappropriate use into this site. And I agree. I think there could be, I don't know, there could be 8, 10 work units there, which would be really popular, I'm sure. But it's the residential part which is the problem.
John, have you got anything to add? Or?
Yeah, just to say I agree with the comments of my fellow councillors. I object.
Same here. I agree with what you guys have said. So I think it's overdevelopment. Yeah, I think if there were 4 units and it was all a little bit less hemmed in, I can just see traffic bottlenecks everywhere.
If they are, they will generate their own business traffic.
Absolutely.
They'll be having their own deliveries, their own customers.
Yeah.
Creating more traffic.
Jane, what have we got?
So I just want to check if people can hear me. I've been fiddling with the microphones all evening. So John's got his thumb up, so I'm going to assume that's good, and I'm going to carry on. Although I notice Helen Kay has asked if she can ask a question.
Yep, down Helen.
Thank you. When I was at Froome Town Council meeting when you last discussed this, and somebody said that if this were to go ahead, there could possibly be a footpath that goes through Froome Reclamation or alongside Froome Reclamation.
Don't even go there.
Don't even go there? Oh,
No.
okay. I just wanted to link up with the Caxton Road development where they've... No? Okay.
No chance.
Not a chance.
No.
All right,
sorry.
just wondered.
Thanks, Helen.
Thanks, Helen. Yes. Sorry. So I think where we are is that we feel that 6 live work units is an overdevelopment of this site. This is not the right location for residential accommodation. There are too many potential noise and safety implications. We would prefer to see additional commercial units rather than residential. I think, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Someone propose that for me, please. Thank you, Mark. Seconded by Rich. All those in favour?
That's unanimous.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks very much.
Did anybody like my plans?
Well, it's an alternative. Yeah, it is an
Well,
alternative.
I thought that was sketch shape, but you could change it from. I just copied the 6 size ones that they could put on offer, but you could reduce it to 4, and everybody else is happy with that. It's a wasted area at the moment, and you could easily put 4 units there without causing any problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Next, Jane, is the old Showfield, I believe, which is number 761.
Thank you. Yes.
761, the old Showfield. Oh, right. Well, not so old show film, according to this.
Okay, so the next application that we're going to discuss, as Steve said, is number 761 on our list. This is the Schofield Modern Road Froome. This is an application on behalf of Froome Collegiate Football Club for the provision of
fire for a second.
Good. Now, carry on.
Well, minutes now. Okay.
All right.
Thanks very much.
Come up here,
Just a thought on this. Were we the freeholders of the land?
This is
another thing we have to declare an interest in.
We're the owners.
Yes, so as I said, this is for the provision of visitor toilets and surgery facilities adjacent to the pitch. As Mark said, yes, we did declare, everybody declared an interest at the beginning of the meeting, as Froome Town Council are the landowners.
What's on this place? I didn't realise this.
Actually, we didn't declare an interest on this one. We declared an interest on the town hall.
That's my mistake then. We only declared it on the town hall. So we will
Hannah,
declare.
if you could declare an interest on behalf of all councillors.
Yeah,
No,
that's fine.
Yeah.
It's all being recorded.
Okay, so we have now declared an interest as the landowners of this application, which actually leads in nicely just to explain that and any will be full council agree whether or not, as the landowners, we are happy for this development to go ahead. So we're just looking at the planning aspects of it tonight. As you can see on screen, I've shown these are the plans. The materials are.
Luna, come up.
What was that, John?
I've just muted him. I don't think he was talking to us.
Okay.
Unmute yourself if you were, John.
So the materials on the application form are currently just stated as brick, tiles and metal doors. I think given the location of this proposed toilet block, the materials are actually going to be quite a key consideration. And I would say that that is actually something that could be conditioned so that there will be, the materials can be approved at a later date. The plan also shows a location for a septic tank. However, I understand there have been discussions recently, which maybe Rich would like to elaborate on because he was there.
Yes, I was there. So there was Rich Hansel and I forget the lady's name from Collegians, Paul Wynn, myself and Chris Stringer. And they've said that we quite clearly said we didn't like the septic tank idea, so they're going to scrub that. So that will be taken off, but obviously it hasn't been yet. So.
And also you see on there that there have been objections from Froome
Open spaces.
Froome Open Spaces, who are against any further development taking place on the show field. And just in case, just to make it clearer, I've drawn this in. This is not to scale, or may not be 100% accurate, but just to give you an indication of the location of the proposed toilet block in relation to the pitch and the wider showfield site. Over to you for discussion.
Paul.
I don't have any objection to this in principle. However, I do wonder whether the location is the best location because I go up there regularly. I haven't thought about it when I've been going past, but it seems to me that location is really visible as you come up the slope would be kind of on the top of the hill, and possibly it'd be better if it was somewhere slightly more hidden away, you know, or so you'd have to get over the top of the hill before you saw it. So that's one comment. The other comment is materials. Really, I think that it's not very interesting, the design, but also I don't like to. I mean, I know the civil society are talking about vandalism, and I think it's a real shame to assume that something's going to be vandalised. However, I think there is a reasonable chance it would be graffitied at the very least. So maybe it needs to be made of materials which allow it to be graffitied.
Absolutely, yeah.
Paint it.
Paint it, yeah. Yeah.
So
don't worry, down at Welsh Mill. Give them a wall, let them fill your boots. So, yeah. Thanks, Paul. Anyone else?
A long discussion about not so much the location, although that was questioned, but we did have a long discussion about the materials, and I also feel that it should be as good and high quality as possible. We also talked about other people using it, so like the park run, for example, or if Froome Town Council wanted to run any events like glow in the dark and all the rest of it, then they could be made available for those. So there's those sort of options. But the key thing was that as Froome Town Council, we own the land, we can impose the conditions. So I think whatever we agree tonight as to whether we think we like or don't like the idea, I think that we have to impose some conditions as a council. So that could be whatever we decide. But one of those was we wouldn't accept a septic tank. It would have to be a mains connection, which I understand would the easiest, the cheapest option is to go down to the cricket club. So they need to dig a trench from that blue mark all the way left to the cricket club, which is the nearest sort of water source, apparently.
The school must be much closer.
Or the school, possibly. Yeah, they hadn't thought of that, but they seem to think the cricket club was the easiest, but whichever.
Because of the fall, I should think.
It's downhill.
Probably. So they've got some mains water from somewhere. That might be the school, but yeah, the sewage. Sorry, did I say the sewage would have to go downhill, or it could connect to the road, but that would be more expensive because of the need to close the road while they were connecting. So I think we've got to insist that that happens. I suggest that if whether we approve or if we approve it, we delegate Chris Stringer and maybe a couple of councillors at some point to come up with a set of conditions that we're happy with before we allow any building. But in principle, I don't disapprove. This has been a long time in the planning, and I've thought about it a lot. And a lot of people use this. It is a big club. It's well run at the moment. It's mostly their funds and Sport England, I think, whoever putting in some money. So it's a good community thing. I did raise the issue about people using it outside of games, and that's not a good thing apparently, because it ruins the pitch for the standard. There was the question of what happens if they get promoted to a higher division. Well, that wouldn't happen because the higher division wouldn't have them because it's not a big enough site to qualify for the next league. So they will never go any higher than they are now, unless they built more facilities, which was another question we discussed and agreed that couldn't happen either.
Like a stand or something.
Yes. Also, we discussed the possibilities of, if that was a burger bar or something like that, why couldn't it be a burger bar or some snack bar or something for the rest of the time? Yeah. And why not, that might not be the scope of this particular application, but if you are going to put toilets there, that is a public park now. There are no easily accessible public toilets. You have to either go to the school or the cricket club if it's open, or the hospital, the doctor's surgery, which is fine. But I know that people have problems with that, and it seems to me it's a good opportunity to maybe work with the collegians, Froome Town Council together, and look at what we could do going forward. And
it could be like time lock, like we've got down at Cheese and Grain, something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
To stop that.
And that might be that there's a delay in the actual build, but then you've got 3 years from a planning permission to do that. So I would favour that as long as we can condition enough things in it. I'm not quite sure how we do that. We'd probably need a document added into this, wouldn't we? Which we don't have to do tonight, but that's me. I'll stop there.
Helen Kay wants to say. Helen, do you want?
Stop sharing.
Hi, Helen. Perhaps she does want to say.
Maybe her hand was raised from earlier. I'll send her a message. I'll mute her and send her a
Can I
message.
ask why the Froome Town logo is on these documents? Yeah, our logo's on all the documents. It's got the architects and then Froome Town Council next to it. It looks like we're sort of promoting it.
I hadn't noticed that.
So do we need to
what do you mean
determine
on there?
conditions
The
tonight?
ones you just shared.
No, sorry, that's
a header on. That's a header on yours,
that's
isn't
our
it?
standard PowerPoint page that we use.
Sorry,
So,
yeah, my apologies. That's
No,
me being IT stupid.
delete that.
No, it just looked like we were doing it in partnership.
No, sorry, that's the way I've shown it on the screen. That's
Okay.
our PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you.
So do we need to put conditions on this tonight?
Outline permission tonight.
Well, no, because
Perhaps before we get to that bit, I just in response to what Paul position of it being was also suggesting that perhaps it be painted as opposed to cladded or the brick
rendered.
That's been rendered, anything. So I just really want to understand where we are in terms of its position and what kind of materials that we're looking for, really.
I mean, they've got to be robust materials in some way, haven't they? But I mean, my sense is that it's what the design at the moment is kind of a bit nothing in sense. It's neither here nor there, and and so in a sense, what would we want it to be? And in my mind, it would be more kind of urban feeling, if you like, and perhaps inviting graffiti or but they've got to be robust materials. But I think that's not something that we can design. It's not,
No, absolutely. But in terms of its location, I mean,
is there a way of hiding it away a bit more?
As you come in on that path from Berkeley Road, as the road goes, the path goes down to the creek level, and it goes, and you've got those things where the park run starts.
That's right.
And I had it just there.
Yeah.
And then that slope goes up over, and there's two benches in there that overlooks the football pitch. So we don't want to lose those two benches, because I should think they're really well used when the football was being played. It's a wonderful place to sit. So I had that, where I thought it was when Jenny and I went to look at it was in that bit below where those two benches are. So it's not actually interfering with the slope as such.
Close to the start of the park.
Yeah, sort of almost adjacent to the start of the park run.
Yeah, because otherwise it'd be really prominent on the top, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah, it'd just be awful, wouldn't it, stuck out there? And those two benches look really cool, I think.
I mean, I think Paul's point is, if you were coming from the cricket club up the hill that way, it would be
on top of the hill.
On top of the hill.
Yes, yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
That whole little bit is rented by collegians, isn't it?
Yeah.
So they're building within their kind of little.
But that's presumably you could move it further north. Is it north kind of?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's
school.
Yeah.
Which would be over the top of the
Over, yeah, so yeah.
And you could move benches.
You couldn't. I know you couldn't. I mean, I looked at him. I thought, for anyone who's it'd be a real. I mean, I've never watched it, but I've actually.
Earlier. I wonder whether there's actually a toilet block is all that's needed there, because the last thing we'd want is sort of piecemeal, this one's a toilet block and then we'll come back 5 years later and we want to put a cafe on the side.
There's a servery there.
There's a little servery there.
Oh, there is already something there.
Well, that's going to be part of this proposal.
So in planning terms, we haven't necessarily got an objection with the siting of the toilet block and the servery. Still not quite clear about whether we're happy with the location that they're proposing it in.
Yep. It can be tweaked to be slightly less obtrusive.
Picked up what Paul said, but I think it's a very valid point. If you're walking up from the cricket club, the first thing, you know, it's right in line of sight, isn't it?
You almost want to camouflage it.
Yeah. Well, you could plant trees in front of it.
Well, we should do that.
In fact, I think there are trees dotted around on the lands, aren't there?
There are some that have just recently been planted.
What's she say?
It's left over, the hand was left up from our
Legacy
side.
hand.
Oh, right.
Okay,
That was Annington.
Legacy hand.
And materials, obviously, I don't think anyone's you favour the materials that they're proposing.
So are we suggesting that they need to work in partnership with Froome Town Council? I don't know how we do that in terms of planning, you know.
The landowner.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to think about how we might word it. So we're not objecting to the toilet block, but we do have concerns about its location at the top of the hill, approaching from the cricket club, and we also have concerns about the materials that will be used, and would like to have further discussions how that issue can be resolved.
I have a technical question. What about liability for the vandalism that will happen on it? Is that something that will come back to us as landowners, or was that something held by whoever's renting that space?
I would suggest that all of that would be worked out outside of this planning committee, and I'm sure there would be some kind of agreement put in place that would set out quite clearly what that was, and then that would be something that would have to be agreed by full council.
Okay, thanks.
Basically, I'm saying I don't know.
That's good. Works for me.
That's a good point, John. It's a good point.
It's a good point.
I did read Frog's objection, but I can't remember. Are they just objecting because it's development on the show field?
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think they want any development.
Yeah, exactly.
At all. They see there's a thin end of a wedge.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah. I was just wondering if there was any other reason. Proposals as it stands. Land drainage engineer tests are required to demonstrate the proposal from security as it's and in a remote location. And as currently designed, sooner or later will suffer vandalism and require expensive repairs. Despite the proposed use of security shutters and steel doors, projection canopy on full floor columns and exposed gutters and trampoles are very vulnerable, and an open invitation to antisocial activities. That's better. Yes, it is, isn't it? But I mean,
we did have a big discussion, I won't go into it now, about why they couldn't add on to the cricket club or use the old cricket club toilets, but it would appear that's not a possibility.
I wonder if they'd considered, I mean, it wouldn't be as convenient, but you know, if there was actually a separate toilet at the bottom of the street near the car park, then that wouldn't upset frogs, presumably. That could still serve the collegians, even though it's further away. And maybe they could even be public down there, but then there's a question who would pay for it. Why would the collegians pay for the toilets?
It's a conversation I think that they've had already. But you know, I raised that. I said, why not have it?
it's quite a long way down for disabled access, though, isn't it? I mean, if you're disabled watching the football and you know.
Yeah, I think that was their point. They have people come in to visit, you know, visiting teams come along and they've got nowhere to give them a toilet. And if they're disabled particularly, they have that problem sometimes.
Right.
So I get where they're coming from. But I also understand, you know, vandalism is going to be a big problem, so it has to be built properly, but it also has to look nice.
I do agree with Paul though. If you work with it and you know it's going to be someone's going to graffiti it, well, build it so that like the wall at Welsh Mill sort of thing. Off you go. And
Yeah, I mean the containers down by the canoe club containers seem to just fair okay, don't they?
Yeah.
They're painted.
Make it difficult to climb.
So we're not sort of objecting in principle. We like further discussions on location and materials to be used.
Exactly.
Is
So
that
yeah.
the long and short of it?
So no objection in principle. However, we are concerned about the siting so close to the brow of the hill as you approach from the cricket club, and we'd want to ensure that the correct materials are used. Materials should be conditioned, and Froome Town Council, as the landowners, will request further discussions with the applicants.
Do we need to emphasise the septic tank?
Oh yeah, sorry, and I've got septic tank written there as well.
It might be worth them talking to the police, because they generally have a designing out crime officer who has ideas about how these things can be counted.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
So if someone could propose what changes said. Thank you, Rich. Seconded by Mark.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Anything else?
There are a couple of others that may wish to discuss, which we commented on. Obviously, there is the one I was getting confused with, the application for the town hall where we are currently sitting. Is that something that
I think we should
discuss? Yeah. Okay. So this is application number 763 on our list, Froome Town Hall. And this is for the installation of photovoltaic solar panels on the roof. It's actually a project that Nikki Froome, our sustainability manager, has put forward. And I know that the assessment has been carried out by the installers, has actually identified that the roof slope at the front there is the best location on the roofs. However, I see the Civic Society have put in an objection, and I don't have their notes in front of me.
Right. Is anyone here not approve? Just before we go.
Yeah.
In principle, I know the people across the road have been written to about this. I've spoken to them, they haven't responded. As glint and glare is the theme of the evening, has anything been done about that? Because they have 3 or 4 windows that would actually be, if they were glint and glare, would they be blowing through their window?
Look into the potential installers.
I don't think they've got any problem about looking out onto it. It's just that if there were any reflection.
If you look on, if you look online at glare issues or glint from PVs, well, I mean, the information I found is say it's actually less than bare soil.
It's hardly
because they're meant to absorb it, aren't they?
Yeah. John?
Yeah, no, have we approved the funding to pay for that project separately?
Yeah, I think we have.
Yeah, although I couldn't tell you exactly where it's from, and I think actually there's an element of funding coming from somewhere as well. I can't give you the exact details, but it is accounted for.
In which case, it'd be a little bit churlish to refuse it.
Good point.
Yeah.
I'm all for it. I mean, I think, it has to be a balance between historic buildings and making things future-proof.
That was the Civic Society thing. They wanted to go into the V of the building, didn't they? But this thing about it doesn't matter if you can't see it, it still affects the fabric of a conservation building or something. They've said this on several ones tonight. They discovered this recently.
Hence why
I was just going to say, I think it's a great public statement of where the council is in terms of wanting to support renewables.
Yep. John?
Yeah, no.
Sorry, the sound keeps switching on and off, so I'm still losing you. So I'm trying to keep up, though. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that one.
A lot of internal alterations that yeah. I mean, from my perspective, it's conservation officer. They're the experts on these things.
I'm referred to conservation.
Right.
Building regs, conservation.
The objections were very, very detailed from
the Civic Society.
Civic Society, and
I think Somerset Road is possibly
33 Somerset Road. Yeah, there's two, wasn't there? Somerset Road. Yeah. The big loft conversion one. Yeah. Number 765.
76.
Oh, well, it's still a slope roof.
Yeah, it's this sort of single-story extension. They're redesigning the inside, and they're going into the loft.
So just for clarity, for anybody watching online, this is number 765 on our list. 33 Somerset Road, Froome. It's for the erection of a single-story extension, interior remodelling, and a loft conversion. I know councillors have all looked at the plans online in advance. I think the main thing that was raised was the dormer window to the rear, which I think the Civic Society felt, actually this, even though it's at the rear, it will still have an impact on the conservation area. And they were also concerned about the roof lights to the front, because I did have a quick look, and there don't appear to be any other properties with roof lights on the front, certainly along that stretch of Somerset Road at least. So it's just really whether or not you feel that is a concern, something that we want to mention, or as we've said in the past, if people want to make extra room in their property, then that's up to them. But happy to listen to your thoughts.
I read the note from the Civic Society saying about, we look at it and we think, well, it's not changing the appearance of a significant building, or what they see as a significant building. And they're saying that anything, even if you can't see it, that affects it should be objected to. That's how I read it. Is that
yeah, sort of how I read it. Yeah.
And so, where do we draw the line? It's people wanting to improve their building, but being kept in a bit of a time capsule.
Sorry, I was just asking Hannah to push the door open because it's quite warm in here.
There is a lot going on in this building.
There is a lot going on in this building. Yeah. Is anyone else along? I suppose we can't do street view from the back, can we? To see if anyone else has done anything similar.
I did try and have a look. I wasn't able to go and look on site, but you can't see from street view.
Well, if you look on Google Earth, yes, there are. It's a bit of a mishmash of things at the back in terms of extensions. But all those houses, I live around there.
Yeah.
So all those houses have a mishmash of little extensions at the back to make them more livable for larger families and things like that. And I'd be looking at that all the time because I'm in there all the time. So I don't have any real objections of what they're trying to do. I don't think change is a bad thing if it's done in, with quality.
I think it was more a concern about the impact on the roof line. I know that there are lots of extensions at the ground floor, but it was the impact it would have certainly on the roof line. But again, that's.
But again, along that road, if you look carefully, you'll see that there's quite a lot of different roof lines there. It's a bit of a mixed bag.
Personally, I don't have a problem with it. Apart from, there's a lot going on. Partly because of the drawings make it look really busy because of the hacking. But personally, I don't have a problem with the contemporary materials on the ground floor, etc. But I think the dormer window just seems overkill. I don't think there shouldn't be one necessarily, but the fact that the way it projects right out over a balcony, etc., etc. So if you brought it back, you got rid of the balcony, and you just had a Juliet balcony, and so the roof didn't project quite so far. Maybe more acceptable.
Very similar to you, but I sort of didn't see it as an objection, but I didn't really like the size of that dormer. I thought it just was massive. It seemed to go out and out and out. And I don't know if that's grounds for objection. I think Juliet balconies all the range, aren't they?
Yeah, there's sort of not object, but with conditions. Not object with comments or something like that.
We'll,
Do that all the time, don't we?
yeah, we do. Well, we can.
Don't suppose you could pop up a picture of how it looks, because I can't quite find that exact document here.
And if just a moment, you may want to talk amongst yourselves. Will I do
It's a
that?
while to load, doesn't it? That's the thing. Isn't it?
Could have frozen in it.
John, if you look at proposed elevation.
You've gone on too long. Even the aircon's gone off.
No, that's Hannah's opened the door.
Yeah.
Thankfully.
It's a subtle thing that wants to go.
Nearly there.
Yeah, that's it.
Sorry, John can't see it yet because I haven't shared the screen.
Oh, can we? Oh, it's good. Good, John. It's a really good picture.
I'm sorry to hold you up. I mean, don't
No.
hold it up.
All right.
You'd have loved it.
Up close this thing.
Colin Kay has asked if we're discussing the SPD at this meeting time. Just so you know, to stay or not on the meeting.
That's the supplementary planning. It is on the agenda, but I really don't think we're going to have time to discuss it and do it justice tonight, quite frankly. So I'm not sure what we'll do, but tell her we will be in touch with what we decide to do. Yeah.
Okay, Helen, did you hear that from Steve?
Sorry, Helen, I didn't realise you were waiting for that discussion.
Okay, thank you very much for showing me that, Jane. And so again, I have no objection with that. I don't think that's excessive at all. And if you know those spaces up in those houses, that'll make it much more usable. So,
yeah,
and this is the bit that Paul is referring to, where essentially it overhangs that, and then you've got a, like say, a balcony, albeit a Juliet balcony, just here. Mm. You get Romeo out there as well.
With reclining chairs.
Okay, so where does that leave us on this one?
I'm not sure.
I've got no objections really. No, I'm all right. You know, I usually take the line. It's somebody's house. I've seen a lot worse, and it's fine. I think it's.
Is this the one that was flats until recently?
Yeah, I think it was.
The same one we saw before, and we had to get it converted back from flats into single residence.
Yeah, I think it's with multi-generational family.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a no objection in principle. We would like to see the size of the dormer reduced.
I say some councillors feel that the dormer is a bit overbearing. No names, though, Patrick.
I'm sort of coming down on Paul's side on this one.
Yeah, it does look quite big there, yeah.
So at the moment we're split. John, you're the casting vote.
What do we think of the roof lights?
Well,
we can't vote. Oh, no.
The big objection was the roof lights at the front, wasn't it?
I don't think the Civic Society, they did object to those, but it wasn't strongly that they objected.
No.
They objected to other features more strongly. I think they just said they regret them or something.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. It could be wider even.
Yeah, I think it'll be all right.
It's like it's fine. Turret, doesn't it?
It's good.
Yeah,
I don't have any objection per se. I just think it's big. That's all. So that's my point. But
So in general,
no, the rest of the councillors are
it's a no
going.
objection.
Yeah, to the no objection. Yeah.
Yeah, vote on that then.
Someone propose that. Rich, someone second it. But... That's what I said. I hadn't got.
If we're looking at double windows, there's the one at Wellington Weston.
Yeah.
The name of which escapes me.
14.
Can you hear us now?
I think there's a loose wire somewhere. Don't worry about it. Just press on. It's just cutting in and out. I think it might be microphones competing or something. So carry on.
Okay, so the next one that we're going to discuss is number 769 on our list, and that's 14 Western Walk, Froome. This is for the conversion of the existing second floor loft to create a habitable area accessed by a new internal staircase with a flat roof dormer to the rear elevation. And again, if you'll bear with me, I will try and find a plan and show that to you.
When I first looked at this one, I thought there must be massive overlooking because they're going into the roof, and it's a semicircle, isn't it?
It's like the Royal Crescent.
Yeah, it's quite similar, isn't it?
Yeah. So I guess there's not a great deal of overlooking, but the Civic Society's issue is as you're approaching Froome from Orchardly, this is one of the first things you see in Froome, and this is going to affect your, your vista as you come in. It's
has done. My father used to call it the barracks. Why have they built these barracks on the side of the town?
What's that building that they're going to do on FR3A? Is it a significant feature? No.
Oh yeah, significant landmark, gateway. On the block.
Yeah, so that's what I think I put in my notes as high.
Intrigued me. They're going to end up with that. Great, that's a big family. But there seem to be shadows like every room. And they've got a basement as well, haven't they?
Yes. Well, yeah,
Like
kind of. These.
Townhouse type.
Yeah, it's like a.
The garage is essentially at ground level, and then the steps.
Go up, and then
yeah.
It's called a basement, but it's really
it's the ground floor.
What we used to call an area in London.
Well, I haven't got any objections.
No, I'm fine with it. I just, as the Civic Society was so keen on it, I thought we'd have a look.
It's hard to understand, probably because it is. Well,
it's because it goes.
Yeah, because the drawing's sort of flat, and it's not. If you know what I mean, yeah. It's,
So
anything else?
Those were the ones that I did have highlighted for discussion, but appreciate that there might be some others that you may wish to discuss.
Right, so we vote on no objection or no comment on the other ones. Yeah.
On the remaining ones we haven't discussed yet.
Good. Yeah. Want to propose that, please?
And that's unanimous. Thank you.
Right. Item 9 on the agenda for discussion. Mendip District Council are consulting a supplementary planning document. Design and amenity of new policy DP7. The supplementary planning document aims to help applicants demonstrate how their proposal meets the requirements of DP7, including the need to ensure that resource efficiency, sustainable construction. This is definitely used to formulate a formal response to be ratified at a latter meeting. I'm good.
Is this I know we're going to discuss it further, but not tonight, no. But does this more or less replicate the work that Nikki did for us on our applications? Oh, okay.
Which is a bit
More robust.
more robust, yeah.
Okay.
Jane, can I task you to fix a date that we can actually have a chat about this, or maybe we do it online, or maybe we just send comments back to you and you collate them, or I'll work with you on all that, if you know what I mean.
I have had some comments from councillors already. I mean, if others would like to send me some comments, maybe the best thing to do, given that the consultation ends on the
11th of Feb.
11th of Feb,
11th
right.
of Feb, I think. And then I can put something together, and then maybe we can discuss that. And I know that Helen was on the call keen to talk about it, and she's previously sent some comments as well, so I will try and incorporate all of those comments as well.
You sent something else out not long ago, another bit of legislation that we have to comment on. Is that the same thing? I'd say right back to you and said, could you tell us what this means at a planning meeting?
Oh, that was the local plan part 2 had been formally adopted.
Yeah.
By Mendip.
And I said, what does that mean for us? I think. What does it mean for this committee?
Yeah, that is nothing. Well, it is linked, but it's not the same thing.
It's also something we need to know about and bear in mind.
So the local plan part 2.
I shouldn't have asked.
We've responded to all the previous consultations on that. So essentially, that was the allocation of the sites.
Yeah.
So FR3A, and a few additional policies around employment land, and the others escape me at this time of the evening. So everything that we've already responded to, and all of those sites, including Saxonvale, are now formally allocated as housing sites. This consultation is in response to one of the requirements, one of the policies, DP7, in the local plan part 1, effectively. So it is kind of linked, but it's not the same thing.
All over it.
It's not. I'll explain later. Yeah, I'll draw you a picture.
We're not glazing over.
Okay, Steve, what's the date of the next meeting?
Sorry.